WNOS 1450 AM and W272EK 102.3 FM, licensed to New Bern, North Carolina.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Welcome. This is your host and podcaster, Brother Edward Chisolm. Welcome to another episode of the Emerging Nonprofit Podcast. This is the day the Lord has made, and we are rejoicing, and we are so glad to be here. It's an awesome day, an awesome radio land. I'm excited today because this is one of my favorite topics in the whole wide world. We're talking about know your data. Over the last, several weeks, last couple of months, we've been covering various topics and issues for the emerging nonprofits. So those of you who are emerging, those that have started your nonprofit, and those that are just getting started, or you are procrastinating and you have that tax-exempt paperwork that's sitting on your desk or in your computer. Well, I'm here to encourage you today to do what God told you to do. So that's how we define emerging nonprofit, those that have not yet started, but those that have already got your 501c3, but you are ready to take that next step. So I want to encourage you to do that, because we definitely need additional charitable organizations in our community. There are so many needs that we have in our community. Brothers and sisters, the government can't do it alone. Churches can't do it alone. Other nonprofit organizations cannot do it alone. I like to say in the nonprofit sector that we have what I call a capacity gap, which means you have needs to be delivered to our communities, but we just don't have the capacity to meet all of those needs. So again, I want to encourage you to start your nonprofit, or if you need advice or a thought partner, then we are here to help. And again, we've covered several topics, such as know your why, know your organization, know your community, and today we are going to talk about know your data. And at the end of the series, we will come up with the 7 things every emerging nonprofit needs to know. There's a lot of stuff you need to know, but for me in my house, there are at least 7 things you need to know, and that's what this podcast is all about. And so those that are listening, pray for me, because I am attempting to put these 7 emerging things you need to know in a manual or a booklet, and that's going to be what I will offer for those who need it. So again, pray for me. Short commercial: if you need information or guidance on starting a nonprofit, then by all means reach out to me. My phone number is 912-257-5338. You can reach me by email at Chisolm, Chisolm, 1959 @gmail.com. And then I invite you to visit my website at www.eckingdomwriter.com. That's eckingdomwriter.com. And you can go on my website and see the different things that I offer in terms of nonprofit startup, getting you your paperwork with the state, and then of course getting your 501c3 application, the 1023, completed. And then if you have started and you need board training, you need to talk about grants, you need to talk about just the nonprofit sector, then by all means reach out. As I say to my children, you have not because you ask not. But my LLC is EC Consulting Services, and we are in the business to help all nonprofits, but my God put on my heart a couple of years ago to really focus in on again emerging nonprofits. So anyway, that's the commercial. So let's get started. Let's get into know your data. And I am a data person. Anybody you talk to in the nonprofit sector in these parts, they will tell you Chisholm is a data person. I love data. Have always been that way for whatever reason. Not a numbers person, but I think that that's one of the things all nonprofits need to know and need to do, and we'll get into that a little bit as we go into this podcast. And so the title of this podcast is Data Matters: Why Every Emerging Nonprofit Must Learn to Collect, Report, and Use Data. So if that's a place that you are and you need some help in understanding how to collect data, how to report data, and how to use data, then that is this is for you. So let's dive into this. Um, every nonprofit begins with a passion to solve a problem. Whether you're serving children, you are strengthening families, addressing homelessness, um, or improving education, then you need to make sure that you know how to collect data. Um, and that's what it's all about. Passion. And I know I'm passionate, you're passionate, we all passionate. But passion alone is not enough to be a sustainable organization. And that's one of the things I preach to nonprofits. It's not just about getting your tax exempt status. It's not just about getting a grant. It is about building an organization that is sustainable. I'm very keen on that because I've seen in my 30 plus years of doing this work, I've seen nonprofits come and I've seen nonprofits go. But being a sustainable organization is the order of the day. One of the defining characteristics of a successful nonprofit is not simply that they care deeply about their mission, and I want you to care deeply about your mission, but it is that you understand how to measure progress towards your mission. That's highly important. Successful nonprofits collect information, they analyze it thoroughly, and they use it to make better decisions. And again, my goal is to help you to become a data-driven organization that make excellent decisions on behalf of the community. So in today's nonprofit environment, data is no longer optional. It's just not, it's not optional. It is one of those things that an organization's value the most. It's one of your greatest strategic asset that you can possibly have. You know, and I know many nonprofits, and I talk to many EDs and board members of nonprofits, and many of them view data collection as a burden imposed by grant funders and government agencies. And I'm not going to lie, they do pressure you to collect data, and they want you to get these attendance sheets and complete reports and submit these things. But this is the approach that we must have, because otherwise we will miss our calling. And our calling as a nonprofit charitable organization is stewardship. When the government gives you money, or a foundation gives you money, or a donor gives you money, then they're looking at how you are going to steward or have stewardship over that sum of money. So again, data is not merely dealing with compliance. It is about learning. It helps organization understand a couple of things. One, it helps organization understand who they are serving. You must have an idea, and you must know who you're serving. Number two, whether or not your programs are producing meaningful results. And we'll take a deep dive in that in a minute. And then also where resources should be invested and how they should continually improve. An example of that is my organization that I work with. We're on a fiscal year. Our year ended June 30th. So I am in the process of completing an end of the year report for my board. In the fall, we're going to do an annual report for the community, but it's been my habit, if you will, as an ED. At the end of every year, I submit to my board a end of the year report, sort of a state of the nonprofit report, and they like that, but they definitely like the data part of it, so they can say these programs are working, these programs may need to be funded a little bit more, but it's something that's very important. So think about data as your GPS of your nonprofit. Everybody has a GPS on their phone or in their car. A GPS does not drive the car, but it does tell you where you are. It tells you where you want to go. It tells you whether or not you're moving in the right direction. Without that information, you may eventually reach your destination, but you will likely waste valuable time, money, energy along the way. Likewise, organizations that fail to use data often make decisions based on assumptions, based on opinions, based on intuition, rather than evidence. And again, you need to be an evidence-based organization. So at its core, I don't know if anybody is taking notes, but I would advise you to write some of this down. If not, give me a call, give us a call, and we can talk through some of this if this is where you are. But at the core of every nonprofit, there are three important questions. One, are we doing what we promised to do? When you apply for your tax exempt status, and those that have it, they know this already, you're going to tell the federal government what you're going to do, who's going to do it, how it's going to get done, and how you're going to pay for it. Those are the things the government wants to know before they give you a tax exempt status. And once you get it, then you have to show evidence that you're doing those things. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting your exempt status revoked. And I've helped several nonprofits. We had to go through the process. They got that letter. They said, Brother Chisolm, I got this letter that said they are revoking my tax exempt status. What must I do? I said, well, you must do what you were supposed to do. You told the government things that you were going to do, and you didn't do it, and you couldn't prove that you were doing it, and they took it away from them. Prayerfully, and thank God we got them back. We got their tax exempt status back. But I told them, I said, don't promise things that you can't keep. The Bible says, "Let your yes be yes, let your no be no." So that is a very important thing. Are we doing what we're supposed to do? Is our work actually making a difference? And I get on my staff all the time about the difference between output and impact. It's like, yes, we are doing things in the community, but what's our impact? I told them the one way to measure, and you can think about this and pray about this, one way to measure your impact or your worth is whether or not anybody miss you. If you are in business and you're running a nonprofit, and for whatever reason your nonprofit have to go away, if the community doesn't miss you, or there's not a void, then you may need to take a look at your mission. So yes, are you actually making a difference? And then the last question is, how do you know? You can say you are making an impact, but how do you know? And those are um, the tidbits I wanted to share with my emerging nonprofits about how this data thing really works. So again, the challenge for us as nonprofit organizations is passion alone is not enough. The government will want evidence. The community will want evidence. The community that's supporting you. Your donors will want evidence. And the next time we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about fundraising. Again, your board needs accountability. Again, that's why I report to my board all the time. I give them a quarterly report, but at the end of the year, I give them an annual report because they're going to evaluate me. I have a job description, and I have to make sure that I'm doing what my job description said. And communities deserve measurable, impact. So again, the question is, how do you know your work is making a difference? That is very, very important. So what is a data-driven organization? That's starting there. A data-driven organization is an organization that consistently uses reliable information. I say that one more again, using reliable information to, one, make decisions, two, improve programs, three, allocate resources, and then four, demonstrate impact. Another good example, earlier in the year, we came to a place where one of our programs, we had to make a decision about one of our programs, whether to keep it or whether to end the contract. And so the board came to me as the ED and said, Chisholm, what say you? What should we do? And part of my job is to give advice and make recommendation to the board. I work to the pleasure of the board. And so I said, well, give me a couple of few weeks to gather some information and data, because I wanted to present to the board good data about the program. That means I had to go back and look at things like attendance, look at what the parents were saying, what the kids were saying, and I wanted them to make an informed decision. And we did, but that's an example of what nonprofits do. And again, to improve programs, how to allocate resources. Every program that you have should have a budget amount attached to it. And you have to determine whether or not you're spending enough money on a given program, or you may be spending too much. But that's what data will help you to do, how to allocate or reallocate resources. I say to my board and staff, there are no sacred cows. Every program is going to be evaluated, and then it could be some programs need additional resources. So that's how nonprofits do it, and it is called the data decision cycle. This is kind of what I did with the program. We eventually let the program go. In other words, we did not extend the contract for that particular program. But once I collected the data, analyzed the data, learned from the data, then I was able to make that recommendation. So that's the cycle. Collect data, analyze data, learn from what the data tells you, make improvements, and then when it's all said and done, measure it again. There is nothing wrong with that. Again, data plus compassion, and I know a lot of emerging nonprofits start there. I get calls all the time. People are so passionate about what they do, and I love their passion. And I always ask the same question. Well, have you ever run a nonprofit before? Well, no. I said, okay, all right. Then my job is to help you understand um, the ABCs of that, so you can match that with your passion. Heart plus evidence will equal a greater mission impact. So I definitely love and think we should bring, and you should bring passion, to the table. Why does data matter? And again, I told you at the beginning of this podcast, I absolutely love data and being a data-driven organization. One is accountability. It just forces you as a nonprofit leader, as a board member, to be accountable. And then it helps you to continuously improve. That should always be on your radar. How can we get better? How can we serve more children? How can we serve more of our elderly? And then better stewardship. We as Christians are admonished to be stewards over what God has given us and how much God has given us. Data matters because it's going to make you a stronger fundraising organization. And I can't wait to get into the fundraising aspect, but you're not going to be a good fundraiser or successful fundraiser without strong data. And then finally, community trust. You're going to be, if you haven't already, reaching out to the community. Again, your nonprofit status is going, and you'll see this on the application, you are going to be a charitable organization. That means your job is to meet the needs of the community. And then turn around and ask that community to support you. Well, that's not going to happen unless you build some trust and rapport with the community. And the way you collect data, the way you report data goes heavily in building that trust. Because I'm telling you, once you lose that trust from the community, or lose that trust among your donor base or funder base, then it's that's the rough side of the mountain, as old folks used to say. So that is so very, very important. Again, to reiterate, outputs versus outcomes. There is a difference. And let me give you an example. Let's just say that you're working with the elderly, or you're working with children. Output counts how many families you serve. Let's say you served 400 families last year. and you did 20 workshops. That's output. Outcomes answers parenting skills were improved, or kindergarten readiness was increased. So that is the difference between output and outcomes. And again, another word I like to use is impact. We talked about that earlier. What kind of impact are we really having? There's something that's called demographic data. Who are you serving? And things you need to start keeping, if you haven't done so already, is age, the race and ethnicity of the people that you're serving. If you can get it, income levels, geography, kind of where in the community do they live, and then the education level. Most organizations, if you have certain programs, there is an intake process where you get people to fill out an intake form, and that form more times than not have these things on it. They may not tell you exactly how much they make, but you should put in your on your form a range, between 10 and 20,000 or something of that nature. But demographic data is very important, and certain funders need that data, or they want that data because of how and what they fund. I remember one grant that I wrote. We had to include the demographics of our staff and of our board, because they were interested in funding minority populations. Don't have too many of them, but there are some funders who want to have an impact on minority populations, and that's why it's important to be able to collect that kind of data and use it for not just reporting purposes, but grant writing purposes. And then I think before we talked about geography, where if your nonprofit exists on the east side of town, and when you do your data search and you find out a lot of the needs that your organization address or want to address is on the west side, then you have some decisions to make, because either you're going to have to take your services to the west side or figure out a way to have your clientele come to where you are. But that is an example of why that kind of data is very important. I collect both census tract data and zip codes. And if we were to take, let's say, Greene County or Pitt County or Lenoir County, we would break it up, or we would break it up by zip code, and we can say teen pregnancy is happening in these zip codes mostly. So that's why it is vitally important to collect that kind of data and to know that kind of data. The other is, and I'll close with this, is program data. Let's say you have an after-school program, then you would need to track things like attendance, like frequency, how often they come, the duration of your program, and who participated. And again, we talked about outcome data, community data. Know your community, population, poverty, birth, unemployment, housing, education. These are the things that you just need to know. So if you are in this place and you need additional support and help with this, call me, reach out to me. Even if it's just as a thought partner, I can help you walk through some things. But But I thank you all for tuning in. I don't know who I'm talking to out there. I'm talking to somebody who's an emerging nonprofit. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on the Emerging Nonprofit. Peace out.
I am Miss Mary